Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of this podcast, which still has no name. I am Colin Monroe, and this is...
Ross Lawhead. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So it's been a week since we last talked.
Yeah,
what have you been up to this week, Ross?
Mostly not sleeping. This and that. How about you?
Same old thing. What was it we were talking about that you said, that's great content, you should be recording, don't say any more until we start recording?
No, I don't know. What was it? What were we...
I can't remember. I can't remember. I wish I could.
I don't sleep much. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did. Okay. So this week we're going to be talking about Star Wars. And, everyone likes Star Wars. At least everyone used to like Star Wars.
See,
Ross,
that's not true. That's what people... See, okay. So, we can back up a little bit and just say that this is kind of the reason why this... Star Wars was the catalyst behind this, because I saw The Last Jedi, like everyone did, and I had a reaction which, I guess, I don't know, a lot of people had. But mostly I was just done with it. Like, I just did not... It really just killed all my interest, which is weird because I've been a Star Wars fan since I was 15, I think, reading the novels and the comic books and playing the video games, watching the movies over and over again, griping about the Phantom Menace, all that stuff that us real Star Wars fans did. And I walked out of The Last Jedi thinking, I don't feel like I need to see another Star Wars movie again as long as I live. And it actually took me about 6 months to understand that feeling. And now that I understand it, I kind of say, well, should I tell people? Because on the one hand, I don't want to talk about Star Wars. On the other hand, I feel like people are interested. Because you've been asking me for my opinion on the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, because I remember you wrote something on Facebook, like, about the fact that you'd just written a really long blog post about why you're divorcing yourself from Star Wars. I think that was the word you used. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And then I went to your blog to try and read it, and you deleted it, or it had got, or you maybe accidentally or something, and then you couldn't be bothered.
It went through like a few different iterations. Like I would put something new up, and then I'd take it down. And what I was trying to avoid was just what everyone else was doing, which is just kind of griping about it and just nitpicking. Because my reasons weren't nitpicky; they were much more overarching. And I didn't want to come across as that because I felt like there's a real point to be made about the direction that the franchise is headed. And the reason why people like it, and the reason why it's wrong to like it in the way that people are liking it. Even though I never want to be the guy who says, you shouldn't like this thing. I feel like they're kind of killing the goose that lays the golden eggs by going this new direction.
I know this is only episode 2, but I think that's kind of a lot of what this podcast is going to be about. That's my prediction.
Well, I hope. And so what I did was I just put a Twitter poll up, and I said, look, is anybody at all in the world interested in hearing my thoughts on Star Wars? And bizarrely, there were 5 people who were interested in hearing about it, which I thought was enough reason to do it anyway. But yeah, then that got cross-posted on Facebook because I still haven't divorced those two. And that's when other people started commenting and said, this sounds like a blog, this sounds like a podcast. And then I was like, oh man, I've wanted to do a podcast for a long time. And then you came up and said, let's do a podcast. So here we are. And we have my disenfranchisement with the Star Wars franchise to thank for that.
Yeah, that's true. So where should we begin? Do we begin with why you liked Star Wars so much originally?
Well, okay, how about this? Let's...
Because a lot of people like the movies. So for me, like I obviously liked the movies. I remember when I was a kid. I was really like a teenager, though, when I properly watched them. I remember seeing bits and like having some of the toys. But I was like, 5 when they came out originally. Or, over that period. I was early primary school when they were coming out.
Yeah.
See,
I think that's why...
I was too young for them when they first came out, but I did enjoy
I think
them
we're
on
kind
video.
of in the middle of 2 kind of generations. Because we're in our kind of mid to late 30s. So we grew up not seeing them in the theaters.
Yeah. But having the toys.
Having the toys maybe, and being aware of them.
Yeah.
But unless you had bought them on VHS, then you wouldn't necessarily have seen them. You would maybe see them on TV, but then we're also before the Phantom Menace and the Attack of the Clones, which is what all the sort of quote unquote millennials
and I
have
think
kind of grown up with.
we're of a generation that was like that regretted so much not being born a little bit earlier, so we could have seen them in the cinema, And
well, but I mean, I think that people our
and then,
age.
So when Phantom Menace came out, it was like I think we were probably more excited than people 10 years older than us who had seen it in the theater the first time round. Because it's like, oh, great, we're going to get to see some new Star Wars films.
I think what I'm trying to express is that we grew up at a time where not everybody had seen Star Wars, which is not where we're at right now. Everyone has seen Star Wars. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone's got an opinion about it.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way, actually, about superheroes. Like, I was into superheroes way before, the Iron Man movie or anything like that. I mean, they've always been making superhero movies, but it's only recently that people have started having an opinion about Wonder Woman. Like, that's still so bizarre to me that people care enough to get angry about Wonder Woman when I used to be the only one who was that. So I think I just wanted to make the distinction that I don't know. I'm kind of bigging myself up here because it's like I was into Star Wars at a time where there was only one other person in my school who was into Star Wars, and that was Luke Watts in my art class.
Hi, Luke, if you're listening.
Yeah, hi, Luke. He was drawing TIE fighters and X-wings, and I was like, I vaguely remember that from my childhood. And then he's like, oh yeah, it's Star Wars. It's this. And like, oh yeah, I remember seeing those when I was a kid. And then I would start to get into it, and that's around the time that they were writing the novels, so the Timothy Zahn novels.
I read one of those, and
Heir to the Empire, which are great. And then that kind of sparked off a continuing thing. There was probably over 100 of those novels until they decided to do the reset a few years ago. When Disney bought the franchise, because George Lucas had basically said, anything that happens after the Return of the Jedi is fair game. You can do comic books, you can do movies, not movies, sorry. You can do comic books, you can do video games, do books. Just, let me keep the, what happens before. Well, I mean, there was the Old Republic stuff as well. But, he wanted to keep his options for the Phantom Menace and all that. And we know what happened there. But, even then, okay, so what am I trying to get at? I think there's a kind of a difference in meaning that has a kind of a slide in importance, really, even with the Star Wars movies. And even George Lucas himself has been kind of integral in that, in really kind of saying, this isn't high art. I just did this for fun. I did this for kids. It's based on, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon serials, and all that kind of stuff.
He never intended it to become as big as it did and mean so much to so many people.
That's what he says, okay?
Yeah,
but on the other hand...
But then, come on, can you imagine him thinking that? Like, I can believe that, right? How can you think that anyone could be so presumptuous to think that they're making a movie that's going to become a cultural phenomenon?
No, I get it, but the thing is, I mean, whether he intended it or not, that's a little bit at odds with how the original trilogy even really played out, because he loaded it up with a whole bunch of the archetypal myth kind of thing, and he was big into Joseph Campbell and the Hero with a Thousand Faces and the hero's journey, and so he put all of this kind of really deep, meaningful all these ideas and archetypes and idioms and just kind of just the idea of a hero. He kind of expressed it in its purest concept, and he did it in such a perfect way with even just the realization, the practical effects alone, were far and above anything else that had ever happened before. And then he had this really pure tale, this fresh take. It wasn't the future; it was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So, I'm wondering how genuine he's being in saying, oh no, it's just a bit of fun. I think he's trying to let himself off the hook there on his kind of later efforts, and really trying to kind of say, oh yeah, it's not that important, so that means that you don't have to expect a lot from Attack of the Clones, for instance. It's all just a bit of fun. And I think he has treated it like that. I think the thing that annoys me with George Lucas is that you see him kind of in behind-the-scenes footage, and he knows, of course, there's a camera on him, and he keeps talking about laser swords. He says, "Oh yeah," and then Luke pulls out his laser sword, and then they fight with their laser swords, and then they lose a laser sword, And it's like, he knows they're lightsabers because
Yeah.
he came up with that. But he knows that the fans, it's meaningful to say lightsabers, but he's the guy who created it. He doesn't have to pay attention to that stuff. So he's going to call them laser swords. I think that there's a lot of that kind of going on. And the best stuff that's come out of the Star Wars universe has been stuff lately that hasn't had his involvement in it. You know, leaving aside the episodes 7 and 8.
Yeah, but so like, what are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about like the comics and the novels. You know, there's a whole lot of attention to continuity and character development. Oh, and also like the Clone Wars cartoon series. That was fantastic. I like that a lot.
Okay, I never
To an
saw
extent,
much
Rebels. Yeah.
of that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's...
What did you think of Rogue One?
I don't think much of it, I gotta say. And because this is another thing is... you know, looking at what George Lucas's motivations would have been for, you know, doing that original trilogy, you know, I don't think it was the same motivations that led him to create this whole new universe. You know, now he's going back and he's basically kind of plundering it for characters to sell toys.
What he is?
He
You
is.
mean now, as in?
Not now. I mean, the prequel
You
trilogy.
mean but now, obviously, he's completely sold out, and he's nothing to do with it at all.
Well, in a literal sense, yeah, he's out of it. And I think that the same impulses are still there for some reason, and that is just the relentless need to fill in every gap in continuity and to explain every line that was in the original trilogy as having some huge importance in itself. To the extent where you have to have a solo movie just to explain why he says Kessel Run in the first movie, or why he's got the vest, or why he's got this gun, or how he and Chewbacca met. All that stuff in the very
Or how
first
he got
movie.
the Millennium Falcon.
Exactly.
And,
You know, all that stuff in the first movie.
but isn't that just because the original movies are so rich with exposition that it sparks his curiosity.
Mhm.
And the same thing with Star Wars, you know, the episode 4, it starts in the middle of something,
Yeah.
and we never really got to see until Rogue One. We never got to see what was going on, you know. And I mean, and I don't know. I quite liked Rogue One. I thought it was relatively well done. I don't know why you don't think that. So tell me about that.
Well, okay. It's just that you knew how it was going to end. Like there was.
But wasn't that? I thought that was one of the things that was really good about it, because you kind of knew how it was going to end, but you didn't know all the. It gets to a point where you think, oh yeah, spoiler alert. Hang on, everyone's going to die. Like all of the main characters in this movie are going to die because they're all on that planet and.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so no characters are going to. But it doesn't add anything. So you know how it's going to end, and all of the characters are going to be off the table at the end of it. So I don't see what it kind of adds. It just kind of fills in a gap, which I don't think needs to be filled in. You know, the episode 4 just kind of starts in progress. They've got the plans. They're on the run. That's enough, I feel. And I think, I don't know, and also the characters weren't enjoyable. They all seemed kind of unpleasant. What they were doing wasn't really clear. And I think this is why, so I think this is where we're kind of meeting with where I started, which was the reasons that attracted me to Star Wars initially, and the reasons why I loved it for so long, have all been removed now. And that's because I really liked just the high epic fantasy feel of it, the pure heroism of it, the characters and their motivations, and now that's all being kind of either undercut or subverted to the point where, you've got, you're getting all these kind of fresh, gritty takes on it. I don't like Star Wars because it was gritty or because it, showed a kind of, I mean, it has a duality of human nature, but that was very clear cut, I wasn't interested so much in that context of seeing characters with different motivations, a little bit of moral ambiguity, and all of that. I would go to other places to see that. But I thought for Star Wars, what it does best is to deal with those ideas of pure heroism. Whether you believe in those or not, you were able to see that on the screen. And I think that, that's what made people not like Star Wars for so long is just that, well, it's all a bit simple. It's all just, good versus evil and all that.
Okay, so you talked about character development and that being one of the reasons you didn't like Rogue One, because there can be no character development because we know they all die. So let me ask you a question. How would you have liked Episode 7 to begin? How would you where describe the world at that point without sort of obviously having to tell us your version of it, but what would you have liked? How would you have liked? What would you have liked to happen in that?
They could have gone in a lot of different directions. So and here's the thing: I was willing to reserve judgment on Episode 7 until we got to see how the rest of it shook out, because it was, I don't know if this is my term or what someone else has said, but it was a soft reset. It was a soft reboot. Whereas, it wasn't like the new Ghostbusters movie where they're just saying, okay, we're starting from the beginning with different characters. They're saying, okay, well, this is still the same universe, but we're still going to use kind of the same character archetypes. So you got, the orphaned Force user on the road to being a Jedi, Rey, who is basically a female Luke Skywalker, a new version of that. You got a new Han Solo with Poe Dameron. They had a pretty original character, I thought, with Finn. And they were basically kind of saying, okay, we're going to... It was encouraging in a way in saying that we're going to be dealing with same themes that the original series dealt with, that the prequel trilogy didn't really deal with. And it's gonna be, a story for today. And I mean, you can.
I don't think you've really answered my question. Like,
no.
What did you want?
I'm circling around to it.
What did you want Luke Skywalker to be like now?
I'm circling around to that. Okay, so that's right. This is all still the groundwork now. So, okay, I'm happy to deal with those elements again, and even to see the same story again, or to take it, to tell a slightly different story with different characters. I don't think that they set that up. In any case, what I thought was the misstep in all of that was also resetting the original characters, which meant that all of the original characters were pretty much in the same state as they began A New Hope. None of them were together. Leia, at the start of A New Hope, is the head of the rebellion. She's fighting the Empire. At the start of The Force Awakens, she's the head of the Resistance. She's fighting this new order. Han Solo, at the start of A New Hope, is smuggling off, doing his adventures on his own. That's where we see him again in Force Awakens. Luke is in the middle of nowhere on a deserted planet at the start of A New Hope. He's in the middle of nowhere on a deserted planet in The Force Awakens. So that meant that everything really basically that happened since Return of the Jedi didn't really matter. It was irrelevant. And I kind of felt like, well, what's the point of saving the universe if it's just all going to go back to the same way at the end of it? But the hope that I had was that they were going to do something with these new characters. Also, the hope I had was that Luke had done something in the meantime. We had heard about the Jedi School. Something happened there. He's gone away for some reason. We don't know why. Carry on into The Last Jedi, I think that it was absolutely the wrong decision to have Luke be this kind of jaded, disenfranchised person who says, quite sarcastically, well, what do you want me to do? Just stand there with a lightsaber against the entire Empire? And it's like, well, yeah, we want you to do that because that's the only thing we know you can do. That's the only thing that we've seen him do in those first three movies. At the same time, by having Leia and Han divorced, basically, and just kind of out of love with each other, by having Leia just doing the same thing over and over and over again, by having Luke be just kind of this dried up, bitter old person, it's like, well, what can we actually expect from this new cast? Sure, they may actually defeat the Resistance. Sorry, no, the New Order. They may defeat it, but they're going to end up bitter, jaded, dried husks themselves. So there is actually no hope anymore in that universe. Luke was the new hope in the very start of Episode 1, and he lost hope at the end of it. He's dead.
Yeah, so it's like these characters that were kind of role models to our generation have then become nothing of themselves, made nothing of themselves. Although they achieved something at a certain point, it was all for nothing.
Mhm.
You know, so I guess it sort of digs deep for people like us who have been inspired by that to then see
Yeah.
that actually it's
So,
all for nothing.
and then flipping that over again to a person who is not a fan of Star Wars, but is being told to see these movies because they're being marketed to, and I think there are a lot of people who. I think these are movies for people who didn't like Star Wars, who weren't fans of it, which is probably the largest market share, and that's probably the reason they felt like they could move in this direction. Is like, yeah, let's just take away all the stuff that made the original Star Wars fun, because a lot of people are annoyed with that, and we want them to see this movie. So people get to see this, take on Luke Skywalker. People who didn't like Luke Skywalker, they thought he was maybe preppy, or they thought he was just, too wholesome. They get to see him being kind of bitter, and they think, "Ooh, that's different. That's interesting." And although it is interesting, maybe for one movie, like you've completely destroyed any reason to make any more movies. I feel in that.
Yeah. So my question was
Yeah.
originally, what did you want it to be? Let me try and say what I think you've said, even though you actually haven't said it.
Okay.
So it would have been nice if, like, the world that was starting, the seed had been planted at the end of Return of the Jedi, of a new civilization. That could have like actually grown into something, and then it would have been great to actually see that.
Mm-hmm.
But then obviously there's got to be conflict for there to be a story.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have been good if that wasn't the fault of the main characters from before. It could just something else that's.
I mean, it could be like they're not infallible characters. I don't know why we couldn't have seen Luke starting up his school, or have that Jedi school that he's trying to keep a handle on, and it's just sliding out from underneath him. That would be an interesting story, instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, that kind of happened," and now he's just kind of back to what he was doing before, and he's running around on this planet wishing he was dead, like that.
Yeah, because it would have been part of the most interesting part of the whole story is the school he started. It would have been cool to see that, and it would have been cool to see.
Have Han and Leia married, have them with this son who is starting to drift away from them a little bit. Obviously you want people to identify with Kylo Ren more than Han and Leia, but, I don't know why you don't... Okay, here's the thing. So, going back to Episode 4, like, you're absolutely right. Lucas got that one so right in just starting in the middle. Things were already happening. Things were already in play. He never did that again. Nobody ever did that again in the Star Wars universe, operating on stories or plot threads which you had to have an assumed knowledge of, Everything else after that has been explanation. And I would say Empire Strikes Back... Actually, I'd like to do an episode on jumping the shark, because I think a lot of times the jumping the shark idea, if you're familiar with it, it actually happens in a strong episode or a strong sequence in a longer story, which is often the best episode, but then it just sends everything in a bad direction. So already in Empire Strikes Back, we've got Lucas kind of feeding back into his mythology and trying to tie things up too much with the whole revelation, spoiler alert, that Darth Vader is Luke's father. That actually, although is a great moment, one of the best moments in movie history, that really puts the story on a bad footing moving forward. And people are still complaining about it now with the whole legacy thing. I hear people talk about, well, at least they demystify the whole legacy idea with The Last Jedi. I don't really know what
so
they
you
mean
think
with
that's the moment when Star Wars jumped the shark is when Darth Vader said that he's Luke's father?
I'm going to say yes, and then we can talk about that maybe next episode if you want to talk about Jump the Shark. In any case, so that's what I would have liked to see from Episode 7 is a universe that is developed in the meantime, not a universe that has reset. I think that was the bad way to go. And then you had J.J. Abrams, who is Mystery Box. He just loves kind of setting up these unanswered questions. And then handing it over to Rian Johnson, who, although he's a great director, I love Brick. I even enjoyed The Brothers Bloom. I hated Looper. I think he's a nihilist, sort of philosophically, whether he knows it or not. He's and you look at all the decisions in The Last Jedi, they're all about... how do I even say this? I mean, they're not. Every heroic moment has got an instant counterpart that kind of takes it back to zero again. So again, spoiler alert. Kind of looking at the end of the movie, you've got all the way through the movie, you've got Luke saying, "Oh no, I'm not a hero. I can't even use the Force anymore." And then at the end, you've got him being a hero and using the Force. And then it's like, oh no, he's not actually there. He's not dead. He's alive, but then he dies. So
yeah, well, and he died so pathetically. It was like
yeah,
he didn't even like die from the fight. He died from being a bit tired.
After the fight.
He died of tiredness after the fight.
Yeah, exhaustion.
It was ridiculous.
It was pretty ridiculous. So, but then you've got all of those happening, and just unaccountable things like tracking through hyperspace. It's like, okay, maybe you can track through hyperspace. And at one point, I swear they said this, like, we can't turn off the tracker, but maybe we can turn it off. It was words to that effect. It's like, we don't know how they're tracking us with this tracker, but we can find it anyway. So, but then all the stuff like going to the casino planet, and it's like, okay, well, we're looking for this slicer guy. We're looking for this guy who can hack the things. Well, we didn't find him, but we found this guy. Well, we don't know if we can trust him, but we're going to trust him. Well, it turns out we can't trust him. Well, it's like, well, why didn't you just get the guy that you went there in the first place to get, instead of being betrayed by this other guy at the end? Okay, so my biggest beef with The Last Jedi is that it ended in exactly the same point as it began. Nothing developed. You still have an indeterminate number of resistance fighters on the run from the Last Order. And Luke is still nowhere to be found. Nothing actually moved forward, even though an impression of a lot happening was kind of given. Plus, we still finally see that there's actually no point for anything happening in the Star Wars universe, because it's always going to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, it's just, it gives you no hope.
Yeah.
Right?
So I don't know. How do you think that holds up?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, like, I was very disappointed with Force Awakens. It just didn't, like, and for exactly like what you said, like, it just didn't. I was so hoping to see, what had become of the world, and it just didn't seem like there was nothing. It was like there was no progress. So, like, it's like they hadn't even thought about it. Do you know what I mean? That's what it felt like.
I know exactly what you mean.
So yeah, but I mean, I'm different to you in that I don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what they want. So maybe I'm more typical of most people. But yeah, I think you're totally right.
But I think the only answer for people like me is just to say it's over now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they could try.
Well, I think it was over at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. No, exactly.
I mean,
yeah. No, you're right. Unless you were, I mean, from a movie point of view.
Yeah. Like the beginning of the end was "I am your father," and the end was the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Which is still great. I still love the original trilogy.
Although, what about all of the other stuff that's been thrown out now of all of the books and the TV series and the stuff? You still consider that canon?
No, I still consider that good, but yeah, it's not canon. They did pull Vice Admiral Thrawn into canon. So Timothy Zahn came back and he wrote a book on the bad guy from Heir to the Empire. That was really good. I really enjoyed that book quite a lot. But yeah, that came before The Last Jedi, and just now I'm like, I don't see what the use in caring about this is anymore, because as long-term fans, our feelings aren't being respected and by the creators, and we're only annoying the people who want a casual movie experience. So I think it's time for us just to kind of, go into the East, kind of Lord of the Rings style, and just leave it to the people who want this new thing. Because to me, it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, you could have this, just don't have it with Star Wars. You can have a big flashy action movie where nothing happens. Just watch the Fast and the Furious movies, or go somewhere else for it. But to Yeah, I think this is
Yeah.
where it gets into the producers, and I think it's Kathleen Kennedy, I think it's Lawrence Kasdan. They're just saying, let's do what we've been doing all the time. Let's just, try and make a quick buck off of Star Wars, just because it's a market brand that everybody recognizes. And I think it was pushed into that by the expansion of the Marvel movies and just how they've been dominating the movie-going experience. It's been growing the last 10 years, and now it is the force in it. And they're doing something completely different, by the way, and doing something really good. I'm a huge fan of those movies. But those Marvel movies have really pulled the movie industry into deep waters, which I think a lot of I think
it's
a lot of
interesting.
producers aren't,
I guess this is a whole other episode, but it's interesting how television has become a lot more long form.
Mm-hmm.
So then movies have had to become kind of even longer form, or
I don't know. I would say it's more of a peculiarity of just the Marvel method and just the idea of kind of what they were doing and adapting comics, which have always been long form stories and crossover
Well, anyway,
stories.
let's save that for another episode.
Okay.
So Star Wars, it's not worth thinking about anymore. Is that's what you're saying?
Not for me, but if other people want to enjoy it, who am I to stand in the way of that? But it is frustrating to love it for so long, and then
have it taken away from you.
It's not being taken away; it's just been dismantled in front of you. Just piece by piece, it's been knocked down. And I've used this analogy just with kind of friends. It's like you live in a house, and then one day you're forced out of the house, and a wrecking crew comes to knock it down. And this whole crowd from the neighborhood all gathers around to see your house being knocked down. And once it gets knocked down, they all applaud and say, "Oh, that was good. That was great." And you're there,
and you
thinking,
and you knew every nook and cranny, and
Yeah.
you knew how much fun it was to hide in that little place. And
you're like, "This is my home. This is where I lived." And everybody's saying, "Well, quit belly aching. Now we can all enjoy it. Now we can all just enjoy the destruction." It's like it's not the same, So that's kind of emotionally that's what it's like, I think, for me and people like me. But it's not like you should give us any sympathy. We were so obnoxious for so long about Star Wars. We probably deserve it. So again, this is kind of the reason why I don't like to talk about Star Wars anymore. Is just because I feel like it's not my thing anymore.
On that note, we've been going half an hour, so maybe we should stop talking about Star Wars.
Okay.
And
we can come back to some of these things as well. Because the thing is, the things that are wrong with the new trilogy are a completely different set of things that are wrong with the original trilogy. A completely different set of things that are wrong with the prequel trilogy. So, if we want to talk about Jump the Shark next time, that might be an interesting kind of way to go with that. Be a natural progression.
Yeah.
But equally, we can talk about something else. We can talk about the monomyth and heroism.
Well, let's end this first and then stop recording, and then we can talk a bit more about next episode. So that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for your enlightening thoughts, and thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah, I just make sure to cut out all the bits where I break into tears. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, yeah, I will do. Are we going? Do you want to plug websites and Twitters again?
Yeah, let's do that. So you can find me at Twitter, Ross Lawhead, and on my website, rosslawhead.com.
Yeah, you can find me at colinmonroe.me.uk. I'm also on Twitter. I can't remember my name. I mean, I know my name, but I just can't remember I'll figure that out at some point.
Get back to us next week on that one, maybe.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. I think it's just Colin Monroe. You're probably just search.
You can search Colin Monroe. Yeah, nobody goes to any of these. When was the last time you actually typed in a website address into your browser bar? You just search for it, right?
Yeah, that's true. Okay,
anyway,
so
see you next week, everybody. Be excellent to each other.
am Colin Monroe. I'm going to start that again. So, what are you? What am I going to say? Are we? We haven't decided the name. Have we decided the name?
No, just say welcome back.
Okay. Okay.
Hello and welcome back.
Okay.
I'm Colin Monroe. And I'm Ross Lawhead.
Okay, I'll say something along those lines. I've got to talk in the same skin as the music. Does that make any sense?
No.
Okay, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right.